So this is what happens when you get caught in Mexico. How did they even find me in the first place? I was coming back from a concert in a bus stop at a toll booth. Some guy came in asking for ID. I showed him my California ID, but I didn't have my passport. Next thing I knew, I was in a van. I got to the immigration office. They patted me down, took away all my belongings. They looked me up and they saw that I overstayed my 180-day tourist visa. Long story short, they didn't let me leave the immigration office until I bought my ticket to go back to the USA, which is crazy because I already have my dual citizenship in process, but it's not complete yet. That could be why it didn't show up in the system. The closest flight I could get had multiple stops. Before I went to LA, I stopped at Monterrey. I thought it was gonna be a smooth process going back to the United States, but then this happened. I didn't get my little paper stamp that they give you when you enter the country, so I ended up missing my flight. And anyone that overstays their 180 days, you have to pay a fee of 717 pesos, which is $35. But since I'm being kicked out of the country, I didn't have to pay that Anyways, they got me another multiple stop flight. So it took me 2 more flights before I got back to the United States. Yes. And once I saw the Edgar cuts and the LA outfit, I landed back to the motherland.
What pisses y'all off about Americans?
Everything. I don't like Americans, I'm sorry.
Mannerisms.
The craziest thing is no one hates Americans more than Canadians. Why do y'all hate your neighbors so much?
They're rude.
Yeah, I feel like rudeness.
It's wild to me because I feel like Canadians act very similar to Americans, no?
No.
Greetings family, and once again welcome back to the Real American Reacts. If it is for the first time you are checking me out, kindly subscribe, like and share to my YouTube channel. And to my returning subscribers, I do want to say thank you very much for the love and support you are always giving on to me. Whereby today guys, on to our video, we dive in onto this video whereby it compiles clips and personal stories and the news commentaries discussing global reactions to US politics, immigration policies, gentrification, and tourist behavior abroad. So I want you to watch this video, but I'll be back to give you some of the key takeaways that will be discussed throughout the video.
We're nice people.
You're nicer than Americans.
Yeah. Personally, the politics, they're a whack country that way.
Damn. So you couldn't live in the US?
I would not want to.
If I lived in the US, it'd be like East Coast, New York.
Maryland?
Maybe.
Is that where you're from?
No, I'm British.
Oh, you're British. Not this.
That's the one thing, not the South.
Why not the South?
We're Republicans.
If you're looking for some good news right now, a lot of MAGA supporters are having their wives deported. If you don't know, there's a pretty common trend among some MAGA men that they marry women from other countries. You might have heard the term passport bro. Could be a country in Europe or Asia, but overall they are getting wives from other countries because American women don't like them. I've heard of multiple reports specifically in Fresno, California, which is a pretty conservative agricultural town where I happen to have been born, that people there are being deported. One of these couples, the wife is from France, and her 87-year-old mother is living here as well. They're both being deported despite the red MAGA hats they wear outside every single day. This has been happening a lot in California, Texas, and Florida among MAGA couples. And of course, they never thought that it was going to happen to them because they only thought it would happen to black and brown immigrants. But yes, they are actively being taken out of the country, sobbing with their red MAGA hats on. And that's the thing about this administration. They do not give a fuck about tearing families apart, even people that have been good citizens. And I do really feel for the poor grandmother who's almost 90 years old that's going to have to start a new life. But at least some of these people are learning what happens when you vote for an authoritarian because they do not care about you individually, even if you're white.
Mexicans deporting Americans is the funniest thing I've learned this year so far. Apparently, Mexican authorities are deporting Americans who have colonized along the beaches and nicer areas of Mexico who do not have the proper documentation. So yes, they've been deporting them back to the States. And it's ironic because Americans are like, oh, pack up your bags, you gotta go home or whatever. And well, the Americans who have thought to exhaust Mexican resources and go live the cheap life, right? In nice areas, well, pack up your bags and let's wrap it up.
Breaking news from an article that just came out today. American doctors applying to Canada to work there has risen 750% just in the last few months. One doctor that was born and raised here and went to medical school here said he's really sorry for leaving his American patients, but he's already packed up his family and moved to Canada. He said he is afraid for what's going on with our American healthcare. Another physician was quoted as saying, physicians are supposed to be kind when we're taking care of our patients. These patients are at their weakest and most vulnerable. Instead, the healthcare system is devolving, that we can't take care of these patients with our hearts. The statistics in this article said over 615 doctors have applied to go work in Canada. At this same time last year, it was only 70. Other physicians were quoted as saying, I can't even take care of patients like I used to. This country isn't what it used to be. And they have stated they're embarrassed to be called Americans. Yes, Canada is a socialized healthcare system, but these doctors that were interviewed in this article said they're not concerned about the drop in income. They're more concerned about the devolving healthcare system in the US. Their driving force have been the severe cuts to Medicaid that probably will go through, placing people in leadership positions, and they quoted RFK Jr., who even states himself, you shouldn't take medical advice from me. And the way the budget for healthcare is being rearranged. They're diverting dollars away from the pandemic preparedness, as well as multiple other things we've seen in the news. A physician that moved her family in 2017 from America to Canada said now she can take care of her patients without feeling like she's burdening them with medical debt, and that she feels she can take care of them better. She has less paperwork. It's less being a non-for-profit up there in Canada. She doesn't feel the pressure to serve so many patients in an hour, like every 5 to 6 minutes. They're scheduled here in the US, she said, and Canada operates in a really different pace, allowing her time to truly care for her patients. I just thought this was really interesting data and information. I'm really afraid for the healthcare system, as you guys have heard me on many of my videos that I've recorded, but this is a new turn that I hadn't expected, that American physicians would give up their medical licenses here in America and go work where they're not under the pressure that they are here. If you like this content, please follow, share, click the link in my bio for your free patient safety guide, and check out my book, Surviving Your Hospital Stay. Thanks for following, and I'll see you on the next one.
Breaking news. The president of Mexico has stated that he will begin to deport Americans that have moved to Mexico without proper documentation, aka illegal immigrants. This comes after the president of Mexico states that he is tired of Americans gentrifying cities in Mexico. In the past 3 weeks, we have seen different events where Americans try to colonize beaches, public areas, and even salsa. While a lot of these Americans have moved to Mexico for a better life, they move there because they cannot afford to live here in the United States. So move to Mexico so they can afford a lifestyle there, but locals have raised their prices because Americans are paying in dollars, while locals that are still shopping have to pay in pesos and now have to pay the equivalent of the dollar. And instead of these people moving to Mexico and bettering the economy, they're making it horrible for the people that live there, you know, the natives. And if you already did not know, the amount of Mexicans migrating to the United States has slowed down by the 100,000 since 2019. The amount of Mexicans living in the United States leaving willingly back to Mexico has increased drastically. And while Mexicans are moving back to Mexico, a lot of Americans have been moving to Mexico for a better life. But my, how the tables have turned. What are your thoughts?
I asked, will the rest of the world ever forgive us for electing someone like Donald Trump? Japan. Not a chance. Trump is just the symptom. From now on, any long-term deal with the United States needs a moron premium in case you elect someone even worse in the future. Netherlands. It's not just Trump. There are 75 million of him that can't be trusted. It will take generations if it is ever restored. France. It's not so much just the election, it's everything that wasn't done to stop him. The United States is lawless. Owie. Remember that the question was, would the world forgive us? Great Britain says, sure, as quick as the rest of the world forgave Germany in 1941. France. U.S. today reminds one of the crumbling empires before the world wars. Arrogant, deaf to the world's anger, convinced of their own invincibility. History doesn't lie. Empires fall, and it's never the outsiders who bring them down first. It's the rot inside. America should stop blaming everyone else and start taking a long, hard look in the mirror.
Welcome back, guys, and just before we continue, let me give you some of the key takeaways and to whatever will be discussed throughout the video. One of it is going to be the overstaying visas in Mexico, whereby a traveler shares a personal experience of overstaying a 180-day tourist visa in Mexico, being detained at an immigration checkpoint and having to purchase a flight back to US. And to it, we have the MAGA supporters and strict immigration enforcement here It highlights instances where strict immigration policies ended up affecting foreign spouses and family members of conservative voters, pointing the unintended consequences of broad enforcement. And again, we have the Mexican crackdown on gentrification and undocumented expatriates. And here the discussion centers on Mexican authorities enforcing visa limit against America living long-term in coastal and tourist areas without proper documentation, driven by local concerns over rising living costs and gentrification. And again, there is the American doctors moving to Canada, whereby here the reports showing a notable rise in US physicians applying to practice in Canada, citing high stress schedules, medical debts, burdens on patients, and systematic healthcare concerns in the US as driving factors. And here there is the Canadian boycotts and economic tension, whereby a former educator describes account of Canadian consumers opting for local products over US imports and cancelling travel to American destination following diplomatic and tariff disputes. There is the cultural friction in Europe, where a tourist in Paris illustrates cultural clashes and noise etiquette differences observed between American tourists and European locals in restaurants. And there is the native Hawaiian sovereignty perspective, whereby here just want to outline Hawaii's history prior to statehoods, offering a historical perspective on territorial governance and native identity. So let's continue watching the video to the end, and I'll be back with more comments.
Thank Donald Trump for the boycott that we're currently receiving in the United States from Canadians. I know most of you may not be feeling this or may not see it yet, completely unaware because you don't see it in your daily life. But just let me tell you this. I had a couple of riders this week, both from Toronto. Both are coming down to see family. One had a newborn baby in the family, and the trip had been scheduled for a while. And the other had a sick family member that they needed to come see. And they both told me basically these stories. Number one, that when they went to the airport, that the U.S. Customs, and for Canada, you get on the U.S. Customs and in Canada, that there was like nobody in line, and that both planes were like half full as opposed to being completely full. And usually there's a 2-hour wait or more that they told me. They also told me that because of Donald Trump and because of his tariffs with Canada and the way that they have been treated by Trump, they are boycotting every single product in Canada that is made in the United States. You can go to the grocery stores in Canada, and there would be where the U.S. products, for example, Lay's potato chips and all the chips and all the stuff from the U.S. completely full. Not a one. They're on sale. She said they're on sales price for $2.97. Nobody's touching it. The Canadian chips, the Canadian food, all the Canadian right beside it, cleaned out. Shelves are cleaned out. Same thing with soup. American soup, stock full, Canadian soup cleaned out. Coca-Cola, Pepsi, not touching a single drop from the United States. Everything from Canada they're buying. And that the Canadians also are canceling their trips to the United States. I see this on a couple of other videos I've posted. I've had several 100,000 responses, and same thing. They're canceling. You read the news and listen to the news in Canada, they're canceling everything. I've been asked to be on a radio talk show in Vancouver, Canada to discuss all of this, and they are angry and upset with Donald Trump in the United States, and the rest of us are going to pay for it. So same thing with hotels, same thing with those that are in high tourist destinations from Canada, Florida in particular, South Florida, Orlando, other parts of the U.S., you all are going to start to feel it. If you work for these companies that make these products that are sold in Canada, they're not going to be moving. So they're going to start not needing you to work as many hours. Over time, it takes time for all this to work back through, where you're not going to be needed as much because the Canadians are buying nothing made from the United States. I had one of my followers on here tell me that he bought $400 worth of food at the grocery store and bought only one item that was made in the United States because he could not find there was a Canadian product to change whatever he needed to change, whatever it was. And that was the only reason he bought that one. They're not buying, and we will feel it. Thank you, Donald Trump. The American people will pay for your decisions on tariffs and the way you treat our friends. Same thing in Europe. Everybody's angry, but this is a specific situation with Canada that I can speak to, that I also have been talking to, that I've got thousands and thousands of people that have commented on my post here on TikTok and on other social media, and they're not buying, and they are not buying. They're not buying until Donald Trump is out of the office. When he and J.D. Vance are gone, they'll buy American products again, but not until. There you have it. Love to hear from my Democrats, my MAGAs, my crazies, my cuckoos, and my burned out light bulbs. If you have any other experiences with the Canadians, or any of my Canadians want to pipe in and fool the rest of Americans, ears full, because, they aren't particularly, I taught social studies, government, economics, American history, world history for many years, and it's amazing. They're just unaware of anybody else in the rest of the world, because they only think me, 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 me. They're going to see how much me, 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 me get them with this orange Jesus. There you have it.
This is so wild. I literally had to walk out of dinner to tell you guys about this. You all know I had a video that went a little crazy recently, why Europeans hate Americans. So let's do it again. Why Europeans hate Americans part 2. We're literally, I'm still sitting at this bougie, fancy, amazing restaurant in Paris. First things first, interesting to note, about half the place is English-speaking Americans, which I do think is a double-edged sword for these Parisians, because they want the money, but it comes with a lot of what I'm about to tell you guys about. So we're sitting there, and next to us is 2 separate tables of 2, a young couple and a couple of girls, and they are fucking yapping. I don't know what part of Long Island they're from, but it was pretty obvious where they were from. And they were talking about what color Porsche they had and what color purple that Kylie Jenner had, and God bless their dad for being able to get them a Porsche in their early 20s, but the shit was real annoying. You know the type. So next to us, at the table next to us, is an older couple. This is where things get interesting. This older couple is from Michigan, Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and they don't play this shit. And so this woman, an older woman, had a look of disgust. I mean, she was pissed. And finally she looked over and she goes, "Are these girls annoying you?" And my polite girlfriend's like, "Whoa, no, we understand, they're a little distasteful." And this woman was like, "They're so vain." And this is what I gotta break down for you, especially for the European folks that are following along. Not all Americans like all Americans. And there is, just like France or Spain or any other European country, any other country in the world, there's different classes of people, there's different regions of people, there's different cultures. Midwestern folk do not necessarily always understand or fully appreciate East Coast folk. East Coast folk, for certain parts for sure, they usually just don't give a fuck. And it's very loud and it's very obtrusive. And I know some, "Well, you're yapping on a street." I specifically went to a quiet part so I go yap on the street by myself and not piss anyone off. These folk are in the restaurant yapping away, and it's annoying. And like I was saying, the reason that Europeans hate Americans is the same reason that a lot of Americans hate Americans. These people are annoying. They don't shut the fuck up, and they make us look bad. Yes, I am talking on the internet. I'm fully aware of that. But I went out of my way to go somewhere where I wasn't bothering anyone. I'm not doing this in a restaurant. That would be fucking annoying. And these people, I don't know if it's the Gen Z thing, it's the cultural thing, it's being a pampered little brat from Long Island, but they are yapping away and they're pissing off the locals, and they're pissing off the Americans that are also there on vacation. So again, go crazy in the comments. Let me know your guys' thoughts. But I just thought this was an amazing follow-up observation, literally experiencing it in real time. So much what we spoke about in the last video. So let me know your thoughts. Can't wait to hear.
Let me break it down for you very simply. I'm sorry that you don't understand this. I was born and raised in Hawaii. I am part Native Hawaiian. I get my Native Hawaiian ancestry from my mother's side. My family was born and raised in Hawaii. My grandfathers on both sides of my family were born in Hawaii before it was a state, which means it was the territory of Hawaii, which means before that, it was its own country. My family has lived in Hawaii longer it has been a state. I do not live in America. America lives in Hawaii, and it hasn't gone home. To put it in a simpler example, that's like you coming to my house, claiming it's yours, taking everything that's mine, putting it in the bathroom, and making me live in the bathroom. And then you tell me if I don't like it, I can live somewhere else. Bitch, this was my home first.
Welcome back, family. I hope you have watched the entire video to the end, and now we are back down. Let me just give you some of the breakdown on accordingly to this video. As discussed, we have the Mexico crackdown and Americans overstaying visas, whereby what is happening is that Mexican immigration authorities are detaining and deporting US citizens who overstay their 180-day tourist visa, in whereby it brought the conflict whereby many Americans move to Mexican beach towns or historic cities to enjoy a lower cost of living. However, because they earn or spend US dollars, local prices shoot up, driving up rents and costs for native residents. That's gentrification. And on to it, I may just want to ask you, and note whatever your opinion will be. Is it fair for Mexico to strictly enforce immigration laws on US experts, standardizing rules for everyone? Whereby we saw the Americans were very much happy when even Mexicans were being deported back home from America. And even when the blacks too were same way deported, like the Jamaicans, they were deported back. Some of the Africans were deported. Yeah, because this was the promise that they were given, by Donald Trump as he was doing his campaigns. And now it is coming onto our senses that even them, the Americans, are in these foreign lands, just because they are trying to get themselves away from the cost of living onto their country and going to a very cheaper country that has got lower cost of living, and in it, like, when they usually say karma is a bitch and karma hits hard, this is what is usually trying to be or rather meant. The Americans were very much happy when the Mexicans were being deported. Black Americans, Africans, Jamaicans were being deported out of America and shifted to their homelands, And here it is, like, it's coming to my realization that even them, they are in these foreign countries, and they are overstaying their welcome. So yeah, whatever is being done here, it definitely does make sense. I don't know if you're going to agree with me, but it really does make sense. And how do you review Americans moving to developing regions for cheap living without legal long-term status? How do you view it? Just let's share our thoughts, because I need to know what's your view accordingly to this. Like, what do you think about the American moving to developing regions for cheap living without legal long-term status? Mainly because, as we saw, they are going there because of 180 days, and in it they are overstaying until the government is taking actions. Yeah, please let me know. And there is the backfire of strict immigration policies, whereby there is the MAGA and spouses. And what's happening here? Reports show conservative US citizens facing situation where their foreign-born spouses or relatives are being processed for deportation under broad enforcement policies. Let's talk about the conflict whereby many voters supported rigid border enforcement, assuming it would only target specific groups, but the legal system applies strictly across the board regardless of political affiliation. Yeah, and to it, what do you think is the irony in immigration law enforcement catching supporters off guard, and the human toll on families split apart versus the strict rule of law? Let's share our thoughts. Let me know whatever you think about these statements, and there is the US doctor brain drain to Canada, and whatever is happening here is the applications from American physicians seeking to practice in Canada reportedly surged, with over 600 doctors applying within a short period. And let's look about the conflict. The US medical professionals express burnout from packed 5 to 6 minute patient slots, high insurance paperwork, and seeing patients overwhelmed by medical debt. In Canada healthcare system, they report spending more quality time with patients despite taking lower pay. You can see. You can see what I'm trying to mean out here. And I need, what I would love to know from you is healthcare for profit US versus socialized healthcare Canada. And is doctor burnout a red flag for the future of the US medical system? Let me know. And again, there is the Canadian trade boycotts and tourist drop-off, whereby Canadians are reportedly boycotting US consumer brands, choosing local Canadian goods instead, and canceling vacations to popular American destinations like Florida. And in it, trade dispute, political tension, and tariffs are alienated standard consumer across the northern border, leaving US grocery shelves filled with unsold American goods in Canada. And here, I would love to know from you the real world impact of political tariffs on local businesses and tourism workers. And again, may you share about how international consumer boycotts can international relationships. Let's talk about the tourist behavior and cultural clashes in Europe, whereby a creator in Paris records a video explaining how loud conversation in fine dining restaurant create negative perceptions of American tourists among both local and other international visitors. Here, the cultural expectation around volume, self-awareness, and public spaces differ sharply between North America and Western Europe. And again, let me note to these points. Ugly American tourist stereotype, are they deserved or blown out of proportion, and how tourists should adapt to local etiquette when traveling abroad. You know, you are in another country, so definitely don't bring your and we have got the native Hawaiian sovereignty and identity. And whatever is happening here is a native Hawaiian speaker addresses the historical context of Hawaii before statehood, and pointing out that local families lived there when it was an independent territory and sovereign kingdom. And in it, the discontent with non-locals telling the indigenous inhabitant to leave America if they don't like it when native heritage predates statehood. And you might want to share about the indigenous rights versus mainland American perspectives on statehood. So guys, that leads us to the end of the video. I want to know what you think about this amazing video. Let's come around, share our thoughts throughout the comment section so we can get to interact and know what you think, and mainly because your opinion does matter to us every day. Thank you very much guys for following up the video with me. I was your host, The Real American Reacts. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, kindly subscribe, like, and share to my YouTube channel and to my returning subscribers. Thank you very much for the love and support you are always giving unto me. Always remember to link me up through my next videos. All I want to say is peace out there.